Welcome to OLC 4.0, Term 2A. This is class 34. It's the last class of the term. Today we're going to talk about the literacy portfolio and exam prep. It is Thursday, April 11th, 2024, and I am Jillian Percy. As always, one more time, here is our contact information. Any work you send to me, send to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. Please include your full name, course name, assignment number, and name. If an assignment asks for both a rough and a good draft, please label which is which and include them both in the same email. My Facebook and YouTube are the same, capital G, capital P, ERCY, space, capital W, AHSA. If you need to ask me a question, jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. If you want to call in and talk to me while I'm on air, 1-800-465-7144. And the office number is 1-800-667-3703. My extension is 2211. Okay, today's work's pretty short. Understand how to put the literacy portfolio together, look at the grading rubric for the portfolio, review the grading rubric for the entire course, review what skills and knowledge you need for the exam or the culminating activity. Okay. I just wanted to tell you one more thing about the previous assignment, which was assignment number 43, where you're looking over your work. If you are really, really stuck on how to do that assignment or essay, where you're reviewing your personal literacy progress, you might be acting too hard on yourself. If think about what you would like to be true about improvements to your reading and writing skills, and then take a look at your writing to see if you do notice those improvements in your writing. Remember to think positive. If this was a friend asking you for compliments, what would you say? So say, for example, you spent a lot of time trying to make sure your run-on sentences were split up into proper sentence structure. You did that because you wanted to make improvements in that area. In all likelihood, you probably did make improvements in that area. It's pretty rare that we would practice something and not get better. So pretend you're writing to a best friend and want to cheer her up. What are some positive and kind things you could say about her work that would make her feel good about her writing? Now, say those own things about your own writing and reading skills. Okay? Okay, last assignment is the literacy portfolio in lesson 20. This is worth 30 marks total. You have done it. This is the final assignment for the Ontario Literacy course. And the great news is you've basically already done most of the work for this assignment. Throughout this course, you've done a lot of reading and writing, which has helped you to improve your literacy skills. All of the activities you've completed relate directly to what students find on the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test. You've done it all. With this lesson, you're going to submit your literacy portfolio in order to demonstrate that you not only have learned about the various forms of reading and writing, but also that you've learned about the importance of revising and editing your work. Throughout this course, you've been tracking your reading and writing and putting key pieces like filled-in reading logs into your portfolio. By the way, if you haven't been, that's fine. We're just going to do it now, okay? You will now be handing in your literacy portfolio. You can put it in a do-a-tag folder, which is probably the most common method, or a binder. It's your choice. You can also submit your literacy portfolio to me digitally in Google Drive, for example, or you can put it all together and scan it and send it to me that way. If any of that is a problem for some reason, go ahead and message me and I'll be happy to talk to you about how to make that work. On 2 pages from now, there's going to be a literacy portfolio. Make sure you've included all the items. For some reason, it doesn't list the reading log. I don't know why, but it is a key component that I'll be looking for and it must be included. Here's just a quick visual. Here's a do-a-tag, here's a binder, or you can send it to me through email. So this is the literacy portfolio at the back of your book. And the very first thing is the piece we did yesterday, the assignment number 43. Now it asks you here to mention what week it was submitted, and whether you did in fact submit it. I know occasionally some people have skipped a particular assignment because they had so much trouble with it. And if the answer is no, that's fine. Just that way I'm not looking for an assignment and wondering if something fell out. It's just, it was never there in the first place, okay? The thing about the week submitted thing is if in case there's any concern about you think you submitted something, but I didn't, I know where to look for things. And so does the secretary. She can help me look for things in student work. Okay, so now they list by lesson, but each lesson had several assignments. So if you look at the master list of assignments, which I'm going to show you in a minute, it can be a little bit easier to find. If, as we're doing this, you realize you forgot to hand something in, stop and finish it, and then you can hand it in before you go on to the exam, okay? Okay, so here. So I went through the master list of the assignments. I forget right now if that's in the study guide or in Unit 1. I think it's in Unit 1. But anyways, I've just kind of highlighted the ones that you need to hand in so that you don't miss any. Also, in some cases, I thought it was a bit ambiguous what they wanted you to hand in. So I wanted to make sure it was clarified. In Lesson 1, you hand in Assignment 5, which is the journal about yourself, okay? You only need to hand in the good copy. You don't need to hand in the rough copy for that. In Lesson 2, you can hand me an Assignment 9, which is the journal entry about your learning. Again, good copy not is all that's needed. For Lesson 3, hand in both the rough draft for Assignment 12, and then Assignment 13 is the final copy of that news report we did, okay? Lesson 4, Assignment 16, which is the journal entry again. Lesson 5, the journal entry about your progress through the course. That's Assignment 18. Okay, now you've moved into Unit 2. You can hand me in Assignment 19, creating a brochure. If you did a hand created version, it is totally fine to just take a picture of it and send me in the picture, okay? I've already seen the original. I don't need to see the whole thing again. We're just kind of putting it there for putting it there sake. Lesson 7, Assignment 24 is the informational paragraph. That's where you told me or explained to me how to do something. Again, you only need the good copy. You don't need the rough copy. Lesson 8 is the series of paragraphs expressing an opinion. We had a choice between should men who fathered a child be forced to support them legally, financially, or if someone was incarcerated as a youth, should they have to do community service and write an apology letter in order to make restitution? Lesson 9, you don't have to hand anything in. Lesson 10, you would hand in Assignment 29, which is what are they selling? That's the one where you were commenting on either the ad with the girl in the red dress or the Hulk. Okay, then you move into Unit 3. You're handing in Assignment 31, which is the journal entry on visuals. Assignment 34, the journal entry on the importance of reflection. Lesson 13 has 2. The opinion on the news report, which is exercise 3, and exercise 4, which is Gary's incident. I believe that's on chapter 9, and that's the news report that you had to write. Lesson 36, your cover letter. Assignment 36. Assignment 37, writing a resume. Assignment 39, which is the journal entry about success. And then for Unit 4, basically everything except for Assignment 42. So hand me an Assignment 40, Assignment 41, skip 42, and then hand me in Assignment 43, and then we're doing the literacy portfolio, okay? So only the stuff that is underlined in yellow needs to be handed in. Basically, as you can see, the journals are a huge part of that. That's why we really talked about the journals in length, because I knew they were going to be a huge part of your portfolio. Okay, if you are doing, oh, hang on a second. Okay, instructions for the paper portfolios. If you're doing a paper portfolio, please make sure the portfolio has been placed in a binder or a duotang, not just a paper clip. There's too much stuff there. It won't hold it together. The chances of things falling apart is going to be really huge. I need it to be able to flip through it and have it stay in order. Please make sure that you've labeled the portfolio either on the cover or on a title page inside. It should include the course name, the assignment name, which is the literacy portfolio, your name, your community, and a date. Remember to include the literacy portfolio checklist and that you've listed what date everything was submitted so that if there's any discrepancies, I can follow up. Remember to include the reading log. You only need to include the rough copies if the checklist asks for them. I don't think it asks for them anywhere. Digital portfolio. Try to find a way to join them together. It would be easiest if you just kind of did one, gathered them up together, scanned them, and then gave me one attachment. Some people have been submitting things through Google Drive. If you're able to put them together so that Google Drive is one big shared file, that would be easier. It has to be in order. Assignment 43 needs to come first. You can also create a title page in lieu of having a cover, which should still include the same information: the course name, the assignment name, your name, your community, and a date. Also, you need to include the literacy portfolio checklist and have it filled in. You do not need to include any rough copies, but you do need to include the reading log. This is basically the mark recording sheet for the portfolio. I'll be looking for the cover, that it's complete, that it's neat, it's in order, and on time is not really an issue for us, but those are the kind of things. Okay, reading log expectations. Remember that you're supposed to have been keeping a reading log throughout the course. At various points throughout the course, I've reminded you and reviewed those expectations. Remember as well that any kind of reading counts as reading. So I have here a whole gigantic list of different types of traditional reading material, well, all sorts of reading materials. This section is traditional, things like short stories, poems, plays, different types of novels, newspapers, magazines, encyclopedias, or letters. Some other things that you might not think of are things like children's books, song lyrics. Some people, for example, you're reading hymn books at church. That totally counts. Recipe books, craft instructions, car manuals, furniture assembly instructions, posters, advertisements, emails, blogs, gaming cheat sites, digital magazines, email, or phone messages. Okay, then there's a whole bunch of social media stuff like Facebook, Discord, WhatsApp, podcast transcripts, textbooks, food labels, weather reports, maps, surveys, permission slips, school notices, school newsletter, office memos, police reports, birthday cards, grocery lists, sports stats, health brochures, bumper stickers, cartoons, health and safety notices, job ads, customer complaints, movie reviews, toy reviews, Google Map instructions, restaurant menus, dictionaries, thesaurus, game instructions, food mix instructions, prescription warning labels, insurance documents, obituary notices, community notices, boil water advisories, tax forms, job application forms. So a lot of this kind of stuff is the stuff that we just read as we're going about our day. But because we're not like sitting down on our couch with a cup of coffee, we often don't think it counts. But anything that you can read that uses your eyes, it's going to count. Bills, political ads, your work schedule, work posters, hockey pool, 50/50 draws, checking out the Johnny's Fresh Market flyer, swimming pool rules, calendars, telephone listings, takeout menus, your flight itinerary, freight notices from the airline, workout routines, diet plans, church programs, school programs, phone app, game directions, classified ads, rental ads, Tinder ads, your high school schedule, the train or bus schedule, Amazon ads and reviews, and school report cards. A lot of times people will tell me, but I don't read. When they say that, they are usually thinking specifically of, I don't sit down and read books. But as you can see, there is so much out there to read than just books. Please take a moment to look through these ideas. I would be really surprised if you weren't reading some of these items. If you really truly don't read any of the types of reading that I've listed, then I know that I would do if I were a student in your situation. Honestly, I would make it up. Now, of course, I'm the teacher, so I would never say that as a teacher, but sometimes you do what you got to do, right? I would generally expect to see about 5 to 10 pages of a reading log. If you look at these examples, there's a lot of reading items out there that might not immediately come to mind. You can use them to give you some ideas to do your reading log. On the next slide is an example of a portion of a reading log. Okay. So you can see I've got the date, different types of texts like the recipe, business policies, song lyrics, letter, interview, newspaper. And then I gave either the title or the author. A lot of these I didn't necessarily include the author. Auntie's Blueberry Muffin Recipe, airline ticket refund policies, song lyrics, school permission slip, magazine interview with Ryan Reynolds, Sue Bulletin. And then I either told how long I read or how many pages. It really depends. Some people will notice pages more than minutes. It's fine to estimate your minutes, right? Main idea or comment. What's the big idea in the text? How to make muffins. Oh, I can't get a refund. I can only get a credit for the amount. Song lyrics might be different ideas. Could be all sorts of things. Love, anger, regrets. Permission slip. Do I give them permission or not? The interview with Ryan Reynolds. Basically information about the new Barbie movie. Sue Bulletin. Lots of different articles about things happening around town. Okay. After you hand in the literacy portfolio with the reading log, everything else should be completed. If it is not, please complete those assignments before you go on to the next step. If absolutely everything is finished, that is the time to contact me to arrange to take the final exam. I will message your DEC, and together we'll work out a good time for you to take it. If there is no DEC in your area, because I know that's true for some places, or there is a concern about who might proctor the exam, then we will work out an alternative activity. If you are working somewhere here in a Sioux Lookout, normally people come into the office and I kind of help get you set up and you would just write it here. The exam is booked to do about 2 hours. It's not very long. If you need to work out an alternate activity, talk to me and we will sort that out. The rest of this class now is just looking at what is important to know for the exam. Okay, just kind of reviewing the important things. I just want to point out, I promise the exam has nothing tricky on it. It really is just us practicing the exact same skills we've been practicing all along. Okay, and here's a little bit of encouragement. Our favorite Ghostbuster here. Hey, you over there, you can rock this test. Anybody who's gotten this far in the course should be able to do the test just fine. It's not tricky or hard. It's the same work we've been doing all along. Okay, here are the course marks. All the unit assignments together, I add up all the marks, and then 70% of your course is based on those marks. The literacy portfolio is at a 30 marks, and it's worth 10% of your final mark. The final exam or culminating activity is worth 20% of your marks. Altogether, this equals 100. That would be if you got perfect on every single thing, which would be really unlikely in English, right? But lots of people have gotten A's, so I think that's definitely doable. We are using the exact same levels of achievement as we've been doing all along. It's the same one as the Ontario's Growing Success document from 2010. If you get below 50, that means you have not passed the course. If you are in the D category, you're anywhere from a 50 all the way up to 59. C is anywhere from 60 to 69. B is the provincial, what we're hoping for the province, between 70 and 79. And then A level is between 80 and 100%. Okay. Plagiarism reminder. Please remember it's not okay to share any kind of exam materials with other students. So you can't look at theirs, but you also wouldn't share yours with anybody else. So please don't do anything like take a quick picture with your phone or anything like that, okay? Telling them about the questions verbally is also not okay. In addition, it's not okay to use any work given to you by another student to substitute as your own as the exam. Plagiarism on the exam is treated as a very serious offense. Concerns on this issue will be brought to the principal for consideration, and he will determine an appropriate course of action. Please don't risk it. If you've gotten this far in the course, I promise you will do just fine on the exam, okay? Okay. Exam prep. You will be successful on the exam if you have these kind of reading skills. If you know how to read a wide variety of materials, you can answer questions about the main idea and find specific details in a text. You can offer and explain your opinion on something you've read. You can use inference and read between the lines to explain ambiguous phrases or commentary in a piece of text. You are able to prioritize the important details in a text. In other words, figure out what is important versus what is not important. You are able to demonstrate your understanding of a text by summarizing an article you've read effectively in a paragraph format. You can use connections to your own life, other texts, and the world to help you understand what you've read. You are able to think about and discuss in writing the message behind a text you read. You can identify the main idea in a text, can write briefly about an idea, opinion, or topic in a text. You understand audience tone, format, and how they influence each other. And you can use context clues to understand an unfamiliar word or phrase. Okay, so some sections of the exam involve reading an article and then answering questions. Some of the reading questions will be multiple choice. Other questions involve writing out a few sentences in response to a question. So we're going to try like a little practice run on this exercise. On the next page is an article to read, and then there's some questions to follow, just to kind of give you the idea of what kind of things we would ask, okay? There we go. This is actually a real article based on an incident that happened down in some of the Ontario hospitals. I have a cousin who works at one of the hospitals this happened, and it was a gigantic hassle because they had to just run everything around. They couldn't use the computers for quite a long time. So ransomware attack at Southwestern Ontario hospitals compromises patient employee data. The data of certain patients and employees have been compromised due to a ransomware attack, several Southwestern Ontario hospitals say. In a joint statement released on Tuesday, Blue Water Health, Chatham-Kent Health Alliance, Erie Shores Healthcare, Hotel Dieu Grace Healthcare, and Windsor Regional Health Hospital, and their shared service provider, Transform Shared Service Organization, confirmed that they had been targeted in a cybersecurity incident. Working with leading cybersecurity experts, we have determined through our investigation that unfortunately, certain patient, employee, and professional staff data had been taken, and there is the possibility that the actors responsible for this attack may publish some of the stolen data. The statement read, "We continue to investigate to determine the exact data impacted, and any individuals whose data was affected by this cyber attack will be notified in accordance with the law." Some online services at the hospitals have been down since October 24th. According to the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, a ransomware attack involves cyber criminals using malicious software to encrypt, steal, or delete a user's or an organization's data and then demand payment to restore it. The center said ransomware is the most common threat Canadians face and is on the rise. It noted that the attack can have severe impacts, including core business downtime, permanent data loss, intellectual property theft, privacy breaches, reputational damage, and expensive recovery. Okay, so here are our questions. Here we've got 3 multiple choice, and then over here we have what's called a short answer question. A ransomware attack is A, software that encrypts data and demands payment to fix it. B, software that steals data and demands payment to fix it. C, software that deletes data and demands payment to fix it. Or D, all of the above. Now, you don't have to remember. If you don't remember, oh, that's kind of tricky. It is, but it's very similar, right? Encrypts versus steals versus deletes, or all of them. I would go back and remember how we practice doing skimming or scanning for information, where we have an idea in our mind and we're just looking for that one idea. So they talked about basically the definition of what ransomware is. And so I'm looking for the word ransomware. Here's ransomware, but that doesn't have it. Doesn't have it there. Ransomware attack involves cyber criminals using malicious software to encrypt, steal, or delete. So it can be any one of those. So D is the correct answer. So you would just circle it or underline it, whatever it asks for. Here, I think I'll underline it to make it easy. In this attack, A, patient, employee, and professional data were taken. B, hospital financial records were taken. C, hospital rebuilding plans were taken. D, electronic equipment was jammed. Which one of those was true? Okay, I'm going to go back and check. What was taken? What kind of data? Certain patients and employees, for sure. Let me think here. Certain patient, employee, and professional staff data. I don't see anything about equipment being jammed, Let me go back and see what matches. So the first one there, it doesn't say financial records or anything about rebuilding plans. Okay. Number one, in this article, the word malicious means something that tastes delicious, acting with intent to harm, a certain type of equipment failure, an example of hospital data. Okay. When it's asking you this kind of question about what a word means, usually the article doesn't state it right out, but you use context clues to understand what it might be. So in other words, you look at the sentence, you look how they use the word and think, what would be a good synonym? What would make sense in that area? Okay. So if I'm going to look for the word malicious. I'm going to use my scanning skills here. What is the word malicious? Malicious. They are using malicious software. And what's the software doing? It's encrypting, or it's stealing, or it's deleting. Okay, so these are all really negative things. Software by itself just means like a computer program. The fact that they're describing it as malicious makes me think of something like something bad. Okay. So if I use the word bad, is that going to match one of those possibilities? Delicious, no. Acting with intent to harm. Well, that would work for bad. So I'm going to use that as my possible answer. Um, equipment failure doesn't make sense because it wouldn't be an adjective that describes software. Hospital data is a thing. It also couldn't be used as an adjective to describe software. Okay, so that answers my multiple choice questions. Then we've got a short answer. Short answers are written in complete sentences. You don't want to just do one word answers here. 4 marks probably means I should have somewhere between 2 to 4 sentences and make sure I answer this really thoroughly. What are some of the effects that ransomware attacks can have on businesses? Okay, I remember that was one of the last things we read about. It can have severe impacts, including core business downtime, permanent data loss, intellectual property theft, privacy breaches, reputational damage, and expensive recovery. Okay, so I'm not just going to copy that word for word. I'm going to put it in my own words. That's part of the things we practice. Okay, so let me think. I'm going to tackle 2 of them at once. Um, core business downtime and permanent data loss. Okay. Ransomware attacks can affect core business downtime, and my brain is unfortunately Swiss cheese today, permanent data loss. And because they might not give it back to you, right? Not everybody has the money to pay for things. Sometimes people are annoyed. Sometimes they didn't do their job very well and the data just gets destroyed. Okay, what else can happen? Intellectual property theft. I'm going to include that there because it's kind of similar to data lost, as well as data loss. That's one of those transition phrases, right? As well as data loss, period. Okay, that works for me. Now, nope, did I say data loss? No, intellectual property damage. That's not what I meant. Sorry. Intellectual property damage. And this is why you always check your work. Okay. Um, privacy breaches, reputational damage. Okay. It can cause privacy breaches, such as confidential information being released, which can also cause reputational damage to the business, right? People aren't going to want to do business with you if they think that confidential information is going to be released to other people, right? Especially a hospital where it's going to be your private medical equipment. I mean, medical information. People don't want that being spread all over the place. And then the last little bit, expensive recovery. Okay. It can also be expensive to recover your data. And okay, I'll end there because that's all it says. I have personal information about that, but that's as much as I want to put down there right now because I don't want to go beyond what the article actually said. Okay, so I'm gonna, there we go. So if you see this kind of thing and there's a bunch of lines, it means you need to put it in complete sentences. It's okay to go back and reread it several times, just like I did. That's all fine. Okay, let's take a look at the next thing. Okay, we talked this a little bit. What do you know? What do you do if you stumble across a word you don't know in a testing situation? It absolutely can happen, not only by accident, but sometimes the people that design tests, I didn't design this test, by the way, will deliberately try and include words that they think will be tough to see how students will handle an unfamiliar word. Sometimes, if you understand almost everything in the assignment, you can just ignore a word you don't know and it won't really change anything. But other times, a word you're unfamiliar with might be a key part of a question, or you may be asked to choose a correct definition from several choices, just like we did in a multiple choice question. First, I would check the other parts of the sentence. Can you make a reasonable guess as to what it might mean based on the grammar and the tone of the sentence? Like, for example, when we were looking at the word malicious, it was describing the word software. So we knew we couldn't really put anything else in there that wasn't able to function as an adjective. Like another noun wouldn't make any sense there because it couldn't work as a synonym. So that's one thing to think about. So here's an example sentence. Her loquacious new friend had her ears ringing, and she could hardly get a word in edgewise. What does the word loquacious mean? A, mean-spirited, B, loud, C, helpful, D, talkative. Okay, so I'm trying to think what would make sense there. All of these are adjective type words, so that part isn't going to help me. But it talks about her ears ringing. So I don't think helpful is going to work, and I don't think mean-spirited work. So then I've got loud and talkative. Loud could be it because I talked about her ears ringing, so maybe the friend's talking really loud. But then it also says, and she could hardly get a word in edgewise. That sounds like she's not getting a turn to speak, which makes me think that the choice might be talkative. So then I would just underline or highlight it, whatever we're doing. So see here how I don't have to know the word, but I can look at some of the choices being offered and make a reasonable guess based on those choices. Okay, what kind of reading formats have we worked with? Well, obviously we read a novel, but we also looked at news articles, informational texts, opinions or editorials, procedurals or how-to, and different types of narratives. So think about what are some of the characteristics of each text type, and how would knowing what the format is change how you read the text? For example, would you read fiction, like the novel, differently than you might read nonfiction, right? If I was reading something in the novel Jimmy Comes Home about drug addiction, I might read that very differently than how I would read, say, a news article about drug addiction recovery programs, because one is intended to be made up and one is intended to be truthful. So that's going to affect how I think about what I'm reading. All right, so we're just going to do a quick review of some of the main characteristics of the types of things we've read. The newspaper format. If you are reading or writing a news article, they to talk about taking five. There should be a headline right up top. Byline would be who is it by? Often the date is there as well. Then the lead paragraph will have who, what, where, when, often why, occasionally how. Okay. Then there'll be some of the major details. See these big squares or diamonds for able to include all the major information. And then less information, less important information will come at the end. Keep in mind this part could get cut off if a new big story comes in. So the writer wants to make sure everything is understandable right away. A newspaper writer should be telling the facts only. They should not say what their opinion is unless it's an editorial. However, the people they quote might have an opinion and they might quote that opinion. Okay. So those are the criteria for a newspaper format. And you come at it a little differently, right? I don't expect newspaper format to be chronological. Usually there's kind of like this who, what, where, when, why section. The lead is kind of like a summary, and then they kind of go back and explain more. Narrative formats. This is kind of a typical structure for a narrative format where we sometimes call this a story mountain. The beginning is kind of low. It's the beginning where not a lot of exciting things are happening. The characters, the story's introduced. Then problems begin to happen. Obstacles are faced. Then at the very top of the mountain is the most exciting part of the story, sometimes called the climax. That's often where we learn the outcome or the big problem is solved. And then there's different kind of wrap-up events that help us get to the end of the story, and then the very end of the story, which might even look down the road, right? So knowing this is a typical narrative format, I would read that story very differently than how I would read a newspaper format, because I know I'm looking for information in different places. Remember that narratives can be both fictional, but they can also be non-fictional. Sometimes you'll see biographies written in kind of a narrative format, for example. However, if it's narrative, I know certain elements are going to come at the beginning. I'm going to hear about the setting. I'm going to hear about the characters. Often the problem is introduced. The middle is where a lot of the conflict is going to happen and the various obstacles. And then at the end or near the end is where the problem gets solved. Okay. Procedural text. That is things like craft instructions, recipes, how to fix different types of machineries. Up top, the title usually tells you exactly what they're teaching. How to make the best cake ever, how to change your tire in 5 minutes or less. Then it usually has a little list of either the ingredients or the materials or what tools you might need. And then there'll be a list of steps needed to complete the task. Sometimes this list is written in a paragraph format instead. Also, these steps are usually written in what's called command format, where the verb comes first. Cut the wood into 5-foot sections. Blend the chocolate chips into the dough with a spatula. Sometimes, if it's written paragraph format, instead of saying like 1, 2, 3, they might say first, second, third. But procedural text is very different from narrative text. And then opinion articles or any kind of longer article, you're going to have either an introductory sentence or a paragraph, an argument, sentence or paragraph, argument, sentence or paragraph, argument, sentence or paragraph, and then the closing sentence or paragraph. Remember that an opinion is telling how somebody feels about something or what they think about something. It isn't trying to report facts. It's sometimes called persuasive writing, where they're trying to persuade you to think like they do. Okay. If I was reading an article and I had to summarize it, I would want to make sure I understood it well, what the opinion was, because I'm going to explain that very differently than how I would explain a news article. Okay. I would want to make sure what part are facts and what part are opinions, because that's really common in opinion articles. Like they might state, the government has just released stats that show that, drug use is on the rise. I think the reason for that is because we are all so sad and depressed, right? So first they said a fact, then they explain what they think is the reason for that fact. So you'd want to know which is which when you're reading it. I would also want to identify where the arguments are. A good place to look would be the first sentence of each paragraph if it's in paragraphs, right? I also want to think about whether I agree or disagree with their opinion. And I would want to think about whether I think their arguments or their proofs seem valid or invalid to me as a reader. Okay. If I'm summarizing, that part doesn't matter. I just say what they said. But if I'm reading, I don't want to just assume, well, this is in writing, so obviously it must be true. I want to use my own brains and my own thoughts because I might disagree with that person. I might have a very different opinion about why I think drug use is increasing. Okay. Last section it's a very vague and very big section called informational text. It can have a lot of different structures. It can be hard to present a universal format. Some examples of informational texts might be history or science textbooks or articles. Magazines like National Geographic or the Smithsonian might be other examples. Business magazines like Maclean's or Times or Newsweek. How can knowing that a piece of writing is an informational text help me read that text better? Well, first of all, I'm going to use what I know about nonfiction text features to help me understand it. Are there headings and subheadings that break the topic down into smaller parts? Are there any diagrams or photographs that help me understand the content better? If I see any words in bold or italics or that are underlined, I'm going to know those words are important. If there are any difficult words, is there a glossary or a sidebar to look them up? If I see a sidebar, I know, hey, that's probably something interesting, but maybe not 100% important, and that's why it's over there in the sidebar. So I would read that differently too, because I know it has a different structure. That's kind of the big idea. These things all have different structures and usually a different purpose, and that affects how I read things. Okay, let's quickly review writing in our last few minutes here. What have I got? Okay. You will be successful with the writing portion of this exam if you know how to write in an appropriate paragraph format, how to use the writing process to do a writing assignment, how to make revisions between a rough draft and a final draft, how to compose the three main sentence structures, a simple sentence, a compound sentence, and a complex sentence, how to edit your own work for spelling, punctuation, and capitalization errors. Remember, it's an exam, you won't have access to spelling check. How to write in a variety of formats. The big ones are narrative formats, summaries, opinions, and business documents such as cover letters and resumes. All right, I want to touch on one type of oddball punctuation that we didn't discuss during the main course. Normally, quotation marks are used to show that somebody is speaking, but sometimes quotation marks reveal that somebody's trying to be sarcastic or they're using a euphemism or slang. It's kind of become a thing in American culture. This is not my information, I'm passing this along, to use air quotes, where they held the two fingers up and they kind of bend them like they're a 66 and 99, like in the quotations that you write. Yeah, the dude in this Wikipedia article has it down. Air quotes designate that what you're saying should not be taken at face value. You are being sarcastic or you are lying outright. When you use them in your writing, they're being used in the same way if you're not quoting somebody directly. For example, Alice sat on a park bench and watched the, quote, runners, unquote, turn their heads towards her, trying to make eye contact. The quotation marks in this example indicate that the writers aren't running so much as they are just checking her out, and they're being less than subtle about it. This is a relatively new usage, but it does occur. Sometimes quotes might indicate that they're using the word in an unconventional way, or that the word might have an alternate meaning. This seems to be a case where writing has been kind of influenced by a popular speaking technique. It's an unconventional usage, and I am not a fan of it, but you will see it in some writing, and I wanted you to know about it. Hint, hint, hint. All right, types of writing formats. For the most part, this is the exact same type as the kinds of formats we read. Obviously, no one is expecting you to write a novel over the course of a test. However, we might write things like question and answers, news articles, summaries, opinion writings, procedural writing, or reflective writing like journals. The characteristics that we talked about that was important to know while reading them is also important to know while writing them, right? They're the same thing. You might be asked about the writing process, might be asked your opinion of it, or how to explain it, or you might be asked to do it. Things like number one, pre-planning or brainstorming. Number 2, doing a rough draft. Number 3, doing your revising. Number 4, doing your editing. And number 5, presenting or publishing your final draft. You're going to want to make sure that you use the paragraph format that we studied and practiced. That hamburger format up top is our opening sentence. In the middle is going to be 3 to 5 different sentences that give your opinion or your argument or the details. And then the end is going to be your closing sentence, which should restate the opening sentence. I will be looking for this. I guarantee you this will be on the test. Okay. Summaries, I think, are one of the trickiest items to write because you're reading a text, and it could be any type of text, and you're creating a shortened version of that original text that you believe captures the main information or the main arguments or the main steps of the original. Keep in mind that you can summarize any type of format. You could be summarizing a narrative story, someone's opinion, a news article, or procedurals. So it's really important to be mindful what type of text you're summarizing to make sure you are understanding and capturing the important information of each type. For example, for narratives, you want to make sure you capture all the story elements and the plot. For opinion, you want to state what is their opinion and what were their main arguments. For news articles, you want to make sure you understood what were the 5 W's, who, where, when, why, how. And for procedures, you want to understand what's the main goal, what's the main steps. And then informational, what is the big idea and the big details that are important to get across? Not every detail, but the big details. We've talked about that before, thick versus thin details, right? Thin ones can be left off and they don't affect anything. The thick ones you really need to understand the main idea. Okay, remember during this exam, you want to channel your inner Liam Neeson. Remember how he's on that phone and he's very intense, right? I have a very particular set of skills. I will find your questions and I will answer them. All right, so I have faith in you guys. You'll be able to do this. As we have a few more minutes, I'll just go over a few more things. Other concept we worked with. What is the purpose of this text? Remember, there's only 3 main purposes: to inform, in other words, to teach somebody something; to entertain, which makes somebody amused of some sort. Doesn't have to be funny, right? Some people are entertained by scary things. And then to persuade, right? If it's an opinion, you're trying to persuade somebody. If it's an ad, you're trying to persuade somebody. Who do you think is the audience for this piece? In other words, who would be interested in reading it? Does the tone of this piece match its format? Tone is like, is it serious? Is it casual? Is it funny? Is it sarcastic? Why do you think something matches the tone? Why not? And then I'm just going to talk really quickly about sentence structure in our last few minutes here. A simple sentence will have a subject and a predicate. The subject will include a noun or a pronoun. There might be adjectives. There might be a noun phrase or a noun clause. The predicate is going to have a verb. It might include adverb or adverb phrases, prepositional phrases, and possibly a direct or indirect object. So if I have the dogs run quickly, the dogs is my subject, run is my verb, and run quickly is my whole predicate. The colorful leaves, that's my subject. What are they doing? They are falling down. Where? Off the tree. Whoever you want to invite is my subject. Is welcome is my verb to the party. Eats and hot dogs is my subject. Are is my verb. My favorite foods. If you get stuck, you can always default to a simple sentence structure. It's safe, it's easy, and it will be correct, okay? If you find these easy, then by all means use the other kind. But if you have a little bit of trouble with sentences, default to this. In other words, by default, I mean use this primarily. Okay. Remember that a simple sentence can have a compound predicate where the person's doing 2 things, like the children dove and swam. The dogs barked and whined. A simple sentence can include a direct object, like Jason threw the ball, or it could include a direct and an indirect object. Jason threw Jennifer the ball. A simple sentence can have an adverb at the end or at the beginning. We will celebrate his birthday tomorrow. Tomorrow, comma, we will celebrate his birthday. Whenever you move something that would normally be at the end of the sentence to the beginning, put a little comma there so people understand that it's a little introductory phrase. Same thing happens with an adverb phrase. He became tired of playing football very quickly. I can move that to the front if I want. Very quickly, comma, he became tired of playing football. All of these still are a simple sentence structure. They're just a little more interesting. Then you can do compound sentences. Compound sentences are just two simple sentences, and they're joined together with a coordinating conjunction. The big thing to remember is there are only, I think it's seven coordinating conjunctions. And fanboys is our acronym for that, right? For, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. The two main ones are and, but. Those are the ones that you see people using all the time. I loved going to the baseball games, and I hated going to the opera. At the end of the first sentence where you would have had a period, you change it to a comma. Then you put your conjunction, then you put your new sentence, and then you put a period. Now, in this one, we have a capital just because it happens to be the word I. But if I had it as the word they, which is not always capitalized, you could see it would stay as a lowercase. So even if originally you had intended to make this the beginning of the sentence and it had a capital, now it's no longer the beginning, so you turn it into a lowercase. Remember that you can't use the comma between two sentences without a conjunction. It's considered a comma splice error or a run-on sentence. Last one, complex sentences. They happen when a dependent clause, which is an incomplete sentence, and an independent clause, which is a complete sentence, are joined together. You can only do that with a subordinating conjunction. There are all sorts of subordinating conjunctions. We did a whole bunch of them. I don't think I included it here. Okay. Things like because, although, when, let me think, after, all those kind of things, since, due to, are ways you can join two sentences, okay? Big thing, make sure if you're doing any writing, don't have incomplete sentences. The biggest thing I noticed for people was people dropping off the subject. Make sure it's really clear. There should be a who or a what at the beginning of your sentence if there's no kind of introductory phrase, all right? If you're able to do these things, then you should be fine on the exam. Let me know if you are ready to write the exam. It's fine if it's not now. I think we have until about June 13th to finish the course. Please, I would prefer if you talked to me in April or May. Getting to the end of June is getting a little bit tight. If you can't do it to then, you can't do it to then. But earlier is better because it's easier to get everything done in time for you. Hopefully you've enjoyed this course. Is there any questions before we go? Nope, we're good. Hang on, let me just kind of quickly check up here. Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much for showing up, and I will talk to people through email, I guess, after this. Take care, guys.